Is it rolling and recording?
Yes.
It is. Okay, good. Trumpets. As I mentioned, I first heard the trumpet in church, the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And it changed my life. The music of Bach today is performed on the piccolo trumpet and some of the other small trumpets, the D. And these were invented in the turn of the 19th century. In Europe, one of the main inventors was Victor Mahillon in Brussels, Belgium. And he invented, I can't say he invented, but he certainly was one of the early manufacturers of the piccolo trumpet and the D trumpet. This is a lovely horn, and I actually got, interesting story. I bought it from my high school rival. I was a senior, I was really good, and a freshman came in, and he was, maybe better. And this was Bert Truax, and for trumpet players out there, you probably know of Bert Truax. He went on to become a really prestigious clinician and educator, and was in the Dallas Symphony for many years. Really a fine trumpet player. Anyway, we first were rivals, but then we became fast friends over the years. And he was a legit guy. And I was still, flirting between jazz and legit, going back and forth. Anyway, he knew at an early age that he really wanted to get into the piccolo and all sorts of different things that legit trumpet players have to do. And so he had this, and I coveted it, of course, and said, well, someday I will have one as well. And then he mentioned one day that he was going to buy a Selmer, and the Selmer at that time was the piccolo trumpet to own. Maurice Andre played a Selmer. Maurice, still probably one of the finest baroque trumpet players ever in the history of the trumpet world. And Bert got his Selmer. And I said, can I buy your Mahillon? And he said, yes. And so here it is. So I still have it. It's, I think, just a beautiful sounding horn. It's got a very wide bell, thick metal, so it's really dark and wonderful. For those of you who don't think you know what a piccolo trumpet sounds like, I'm telling you, you do, because the Beatles wanted that sound on that song, Penny Lane. And that is a piccolo trumpet played in the baroque trumpet style. I think by Dave Mason, I think his name was, not the Pink Floyd guy, but a legit English trumpet player. Obviously, really, really good, because that is one hell of a solo. Now, I haven't played all month, so wish me luck, but we'll see what happens. Oh, that was painful and far from perfect, but most of the notes came out all these years later. But most trumpet players, really want to learn that, and sort of a benchmark along your trumpet playing days. In San Francisco, I was one of the few young trumpet players who both had a good working knowledge of playing baroque music and jazz and popular music. So there were a lot of world-class pop stars living and playing in the Bay Area at the time. And I had a good fortune to work with a number of them and learn a tremendous amount and being around them, experiencing their music and their process. I think one of the first ones and one of the absolutely most influential was Van Morrison. And he was working on a record and wanted that Penny Lane sound. And he called a few people and they said, well, Isham would be the guy. So I went along, and he had this song, Troubadours, which is on Into the Music, I believe. And just a beautiful song, and it just called out for that Penny Lane sound. Let's see if I remember that. Okay. That came out pretty good. I'll quit while I'm ahead. That high D. Anyway, I improvised a baroque solo on that song, and he loved it. And he said, well, what else do you play? And I said, well, I play trumpet and I play flugelhorn. And so I think I played, I'll have to find out what that was and we'll talk about that some other time, but I played a flugelhorn solo on that record as well. And then he said, well, saxophone, we need saxophone on this record. Do you know any saxophone players? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, of course, I know a great many saxophone players, but at that time in San Francisco, two really the leading saxophone players in the world happened to be living. And one was David Liebman, who I went on to be in a band with, and that's another story. But his roommate was Pee Wee Ellis. And Pee Wee, of course, has an incredible background of being in the James Brown band and writing a lot of those instrumental tracks that were huge hits for James. And I had gotten to know Pee Wee, and I called him up and brought him in, and he played on that record as well, did some arranging, and Pee Wee and I became Van's horn section. And oh my God, almost 20 years, the two of us together. Some of you nerdy trumpet players out there may notice on this horn, this longer lead pipe. Well, the piccolo is in the key of B flat, which means it's an octave higher than the normal trumpet. But that's not a great key for some of this baroque music. So part of the invention was to lower the pitch of the horn to A, which means a longer lead pipe. Well, this particular horn was only in B flat. And back in the day, I actually worked in a music store. My first job was sweeping the floor at Whitney's Band Instruments and restocking their shelves. And I gradually worked my way up to working in the repair department. And I learned enough to make myself a funny little A lead pipe for my B flat trumpet. Years later, I realized, come on, you can do better than that. And I went to Bob Malone. Now, Bob Malone is sort of a legend of the trumpet world. He had probably in LA the most famous repair shop and customizing shop. In fact, he was so famous that Yamaha took him and put him in charge of all the Yamaha horns for many, many years. Anyway, this is a Bob Malone A lead pipe for my Mahillon piccolo trumpet. So I didn't have a long career as a baroque trumpet player, but I did do a number of pieces. Remember, I did the Christmas oratorio, which is a lot of fun. I think it was under the auspices of the Bach Society. We did that, and it was great. My mother was, I think she was actually the concert mistress of this particular group. And we were in a church, and there's a bass aria at the end of part one, I think it is. And the whole orchestra fell apart right in the middle of it. And the conductor, poor man, just got totally confused and didn't quite know what to do. So I just said to myself, all right, well, I'm going to come in. And the great thing about this instrument is that it's the leading instrument. It's the lead guitar. When it comes in, there's no mistaking it. It's the call to arms. This is where you're at. And I remember it's the ending part of that bass aria. Well, I'll stop there because I play it safe. But it's just a beautiful piece. And I remember the whole orchestra said, oh, there we are. And we finished perfectly. So I went on actually to play a lot of Bach cantatas with Bert. Bert and I played together. We were both out of college and professional trumpet players. And we played a number of Bach cantatas together with the Bach Society. A number of years later, I had my first record deal for band Group 87. And there was a piece that I'd played Oberheim synthesizer on, and some wise guy in the band said, well, you should double that with piccolo trumpet. And this guy came out and what was it? Oh yeah, something like that. 3 piccolo trumpets, all triple tracked, real 80s rock. And a little while after that, I did my first solo record for Windham Hill. vapor drawings. And I wrote a piece on that called On the Threshold of Liberty. That piece has been one of the main pieces of the music that people have responded to in my career. But I remember having the whole thing finished. And we're working 7 days a week, 18, 20-hour days, and I'm exhausted. And I don't have a melody for this thing. And I think it was one of those situations where literally I'm in the shower in the morning, I'm tired, and the producer has said, today's the day. If you don't put a melody on this thing, it won't have one because we have to mix this tomorrow. And I had this idea, and I think I sketched it out. I was singing it in the shower, and I rushed off. I played it, and it was really good. And we all smiled and said, okay, this is done. And then we went to the back half of the song to play the melody again. And some wise ass, probably me, said, it should be up an octave. I didn't have this. I should have had this. This would have done the job. Or an E flat or something, some higher trumpet, because it was a very heroic, noble melody, and it should be. I ended up having to play it on my jazz Martin trumpet. I had to punch in, which means I had to do it phrase by phrase by phrase in order to get it to sound even halfway decent like I wanted it to. But if I had this horn, let's see. And so forth. And that's as much as I'm going to try today. So somehow I got that out of this horn, which any trumpet player will know. That's a tall order. This horn is specifically, which we'll talk about later, is a Martin, which is just, it's a jazz horn. It's Miles Davis, it's Chet Baker. So to do all this heroic stuff was pretty heroic. I think the favorite memories with this are that that first look on Van Morrison's face when I played it, and he knew that not only had he picked the right horn, but he picked the right player, and the player was playing the right notes. And Van is an interesting guy, but when he is pleased, he is the most charming person in the whole world. I think the only thing I regret about piccolos is just that I never did sort of follow that one. It's not a regret. Life takes many paths. I love that music, that Baroque music. And just even playing these little excerpts today makes me realize how much I love it. I don't think I ever would have devoted my entire life to it, especially having discovered the various things of other musical paths that I've discovered. But it was a path that I could have been very happy following. I think the craziest, and it isn't a fun crazy. It was a debilitating crazy. I actually did do a church concert playing Handel, having played a rock and roll gig the night before and not taken care of my lip. And I went in and I played the rehearsal okay, but by the time I got to the actual church service, the lip was pretty tight and pretty thick and pretty unvibrating. And I remember having to take the entire back half of the handle down an octave. And that's just the worst thing for a trumpet player, because it's you want to be strong, you want to be up there, you want to do it and be the leader and be godlike. And yeah, that's still a low point on my of memories. I think the biggest lesson that the piccolo teaches you is practice. Practice, consistency, responsibility. Like when I mentioned that I'd blown my lip out. You can't do that and be a piccolo player. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be responsible for the physical body, for the psychological attitude, and just it's an athletic type ballet dancer type commitment. Well, this is the first of several piccolos. I went on after moving back to America from making my first solo record and did my first film score, got paid a nice paycheck, and I bought another piccolo. So that'll be another story.